I understand that you have all read this book. So maybe I should read less and talk more or interact more and have more questions. Because if you've read the book, you hardly want to hear great long portions of it read by me. Is that agreeable to all of you, ladies and gentlemen? When I was a child, I was read to. And then I learned how to read. When I was read to, which was the most delicious and marvellous experience, read to by my mother and read to at school by the teacher. I went to a primary school in South London, and every day ended with half an hour of reading by the teacher from a classic novel, The Borrowers, Treasure Island, that sort of thing. And when I was read to, I would go into this trance. I'd be awake, I would be conscious, but I would be cocooned in this delicious aura of pleasure. When I was about 12, I went to a progressive Frobel school. It was a prep school, but it was run on Frobel principles. It was child-centred. And I had a teacher called Miss Akerster. And Miss Akerster, I thought was a rather, this is important to the story, ladies, please, this might offend you, but I thought she was a rather elderly lady. She used to wear tweed suits and pearls and little pearl earrings and red lipstick. And every Friday, she would read to us, in fact, as often as possible, but certainly every Friday at length, she'd read to us from these long narrative poems. Longfellow's Hiawatha, for instance. Don Juan, bit racy. And I used to sit in the class and two things would happen. She would start to read, and this is now poetry, so it's rhythmical. It's got a beat. So the kind of shaman effect, the entrancing, mesmerizing effect, is even more powerful than that which I had experienced reading prose. And in the intervening time, I have written a wide variety of different things, film scripts and plays and novels and short stories and reviews. There is no end to my talent. From the beginning, it's when Garrett, the gardener, comes and finds her, and he put his hand into his jacket pocket. He's told her he has a present for her. Willie put his hand into his jacket pocket and took out a paper bag. Then from out of the paper bag, he pulled an orange barley sugar in the shape of a shepherd's crook. You'd have a sweet tooth, I'd say. That's why I got it. She stared at the barley sugar. It was deep. It was a deep and lovely orange colour, with a small but desirable pink ribbon tied in a bow at the point where the shaft started to curve. She wanted it very much. She had never had a barley sugar before, but she'd spoken to other girls who had, and from them she knew that it was one of the loveliest things on earth. You want it, he said. In her stomach she felt a strange but pleasurable, agitated feeling, while inside her mouth her cheeks went wet with spit, while all over her tongue there were little prickles of sensation that she recognized as need. Yes, she said. Will you be nice to me then? She wondered what that meant, nice. She would be courteous, she was sure of that. She knew what words she had to say to express gratitude. She would be polite. Was that what he meant by being nice? As he pondered, she felt herself pulled in different directions. The anxious part of her nature, the part that looked after her well-being, said, no, don't take it, don't accept it. What he means by nice isn't nice. He'll want things off you, things that are dirty and horrible. And the simplest thing, the easiest thing, the cleanest thing, is to just say no, now, and turn around and go back to looking for eggs. She's the poultry girl at the orphanage, so she's collecting the eggs. The other side of her nature, her greedy side, said the reverse. Here was a present of a lovely piece of lovely barley sugar. Had she not always wanted to taste it? Yes, she had. Well, here was her chance. All she needed to do was reach out and take it from him. That was all, nothing more. Then all she would have to say was, "Thank you." She could do that, could she not? Yes, she could. Once she had done that, she would have discharged her duties, and in return, the barley sugar would be hers. Without thought, without any decision to make the movement, she just reached towards him and opened her hand. "Just as I thought," he said. "Little Foxy Moll has a sweet tooth. Isn't that right, my dear one? You've a sweet tooth. Confess it." "Yes." "Yes, what?" "Yes, what?" What had he asked of her? What did he want her to say? She could not think. In her head, she had only one thought: to get the twist of barley sugar and make it hers. "Yes, what?" he said. "Yes, Foxy Moll has a red tooth." "A red tooth," he said, and snorted. "You mean a sweet tooth?" She began to flush. "Yes, a sweet tooth," she said. "Foxy Moll has a sweet tooth." He put the barley sugar in her palm. She closed her fingers around it, and then in one swift movement, she slipped her hand into the pocket of her smock and put the precious barley sugar in the crease at the very bottom, where grit and fluff collected. "What do you say now?" said Willie. "Thank you?" "No, it's thank you, Willie. Thank you, Willie. Oh, Foxy Moll is learning some manners, and what a lovely thing it is to see her so mannerly." He put the paper bag in his pocket and walked off with a smirk on his face. She went back to her egg hunt. Her face began to cool. She filled her basket and brought the eggs into Mrs. McSorley. Then she slipped up to her dormitory, although she was not meant to go there in the day, and hid the barley sugar inside the pillow slip around her pillow. That night in bed, she listened to the breathing of the girls around her. Their breathing was normal, but as time passed, it became slower and more regular. After a while, the point came when she felt sure everyone was asleep. She pulled her barley sugar out from inside the pillow slip and undid the ribbon with care. She put the ribbon back inside the pillow slip so that she could use it in the morning. And now, at last, came the moment she had anticipated all day. She slipped the end of the barley sugar, not the crook, but the straight end, into her mouth and began to suck. At first, the barley sugar did not taste of anything. The sensation she had was of something cold and glassy and hard in her mouth. But within seconds, she was graced with a new sensation, a moist and extraordinarily sweet taste that spread through her mouth and down her throat. It was the nicest taste that she had ever tasted in her whole life. In the morning, after she had brushed her hair, she remembered the ribbon in her pillow slip. She fetched it and tied her hair at the back. Claire Corrigan saw the new coloured ribbon. "Where did that come from?" "It was a present," she said. "Who gave you a present? You don't know anybody." "Willie Garrett, the new man in the gardens," she said. "Oh," said Claire Corrigan, her eyes wide with what Foxy Moll recognised was a mixture of surprise and envy. Envy, she thought, as she ran downstairs. Envy? No one had ever envied anything of hers before. The very idea made her feel giddy and powerful. After breakfast, Willie came and found her in the little garden. "I like the ribbon," he said. "Do you?" He touched the ribbon. It was only a gentle touch, but her whole scalp tingled. She had never known anything like these feelings before. They were strange and powerful, but not unpleasant. "There'll be more where that came from," he said. He walked off, and, filled with elation, she went on with the work of egg collection. And the reason I decided to read you that bit was because I said I was interested in writing stories, writing things that made people feel. Of course, I'm also interested in writing stories that are about how people feel. So the idea of feeling comes together. Basically, everything that I write, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, is an attempt to chart people's feelings and the way their feelings change. Obviously, her feelings here, first of all, she likes all the gifts that he gives, and then she likes the attention, and then she stops being interested in the gifts because she becomes infatuated with him, which of course is his intention, so that he can have sex with her. I'm going to return now to Miss Akerster. I was asked to write, and then you're going to ask questions, because I've spieled enough. I was asked by the Belfast Telegraph a few years ago to write something about school teachers who meant a lot to me, to you. That was the title, School Teachers Who Formed You, or something. So I wrote about Miss Whiting and Miss Akerster, but I mainly wrote about Miss Akerster. About a month later, I get a letter. Right? I get a letter. And I turn it over, and it says, I can't remember, Mrs. Snell, The Dell, Bromsgrove, Coventry, whatever. I think, who's Mrs. Snell? I've never heard of Mrs. Snell. So I open it, take it out, it's very beautifully written, blue Basildon bond, black ink, done properly. And Mrs. Snell begins by saying, you may remember me you do remember me as Miss Akerster. And I'm a member of the National Trust, and the National Trust recently organised a tour of stately homes, and we came to Belfast for one night to go to the big place down in Bangor. No, the other one. Clandyboy. They were going to Clandyboy. And she said we were in the Europa for one night, and I was waiting while my husband filled in the little docket with our address, and I picked up the Belfast Telegraph, and I was quite delighted to read your account, and I do so remember reading those poems, and you were a lovely class and a lovely boy, although there is just one tiny thing which I do feel I need to point out to you now. You mention in the article that you thought I was sort of middle to... I was actually 25.
It's based on facts, and some very dangerous facts. I'm wondering, Carlo, have you had any fallout from writing this? Are there people after you with shotguns?
There were a lot of people after Marcus Burke.
Really?
Oh yeah, he had a terrible time. But because this is a novel, people can just say it's just a novel. It's just rubbish. He just made it up.
So that protects you.
Yeah. What, though, is interesting is the day after it's published, if someone rings me up and gives me the name of the IRA guy who murdered her. And then I realised, actually, that if I'd really paid attention to the things Marcus Burke had said to me, I would have known this already. Because I then subsequently realised he was sending me all sorts of secret signals that I just, I just hadn't picked up on. But I mean, the man who killed her is long dead. I'm not interested in that anymore. I mean, I am interested in it, but that is not the centre of interest. The centre of interest for me is the really big thing, which is once the state, any state, gets you, sets its little beady eye on you and decides it's going to do something, the state can be a very formidable and cruel and merciless master or mistress.
It's very important for somebody to have the courage to point this out.
I'm not really that brave, I would like to say.
Well, I'm glad there's been no fallout.
No, I'm not going to Tipperary, though.
No, it's just that you're very emphatic at the end of the book in saying this is made up, but it's so ingeniously constructed that many of us are sort of convinced that it's not made up, that it is in fact true. It's an art versus...
It's a very good question. I think probably Marcus Burke knew exactly how she was killed, for instance. And when I wrote him and described, exactly, because the last letter I wrote him was, I didn't send him the killing scene, but I said it's going to happen like this, they're going to do this, they're going to do this, and he wrote back. It isn't that... it isn't genius or prescience. It is actually topography. I always work with a map. So I had a very detailed map of all the fields. I had the police map, the crime map, with the fields and the dugout and the thing. And the more I looked at it, I noticed this little building on the other side of the farm belonging to a man called Lynch. And I decided might have been wrong, it could have been the Fitzgeralds. They also had an outhouse just to the north. But I decided that must be where they killed her. There had to be. They couldn't have done it outdoors. That must be where they did it. And if they didn't do it there, then they did it in a place just like it. But also, they killed her and then they carried her there. So you're not going to kill somebody a long way away and, you're going to kill them reasonable distance. Close enough. So quite often, it's not that you're clever, you just look at it and you go, well, I know this happens and I know this happens, so in all likelihood, it's probably like this. I wanted the map in the end papers, but the publisher thought that having the map would obstruct people's imagination's proper function. Personally, I'd have had the map.
Well, Charlie, do your map.
Yeah, but didn't you love, Swallows and Amazons, or childhood books of Robinson Crusoe when they would do a fake map?
Yes.
All that. I love maps. And maps, to go back to time, are wonderful because they show you everything in one go.
Yes.
I can only experience the walk from here to the City Hall in time. I set off and I walk. I can look at a map and I can see it in a second.
Here lies treasure.
Yes. So I love maps. I really do. So being chronological and having a map, these are the two things that I find very useful when I write.